Unprecedented. This is a word that we hear so often right now, and it so well describes the situation we're in. We've never been in something like this before. I want to talk to you today about something else that's also unprecedented that is happening right now. Did you know that hundreds of thousands, if not 1 million Muslims are coming to Christ every single year? This is unbelievable. Now, David Garrison, who's the author of A Wind in the House of Islam, says, "We are in the midst of the greatest turning of Muslims to Christ in 14 centuries. What this means is that for 14 centuries, there's almost nothing recorded in terms of Muslims coming to Christ, very small numbers. And then all of a sudden, in the last 2 to 3 decades, we see this massive jump in terms of numbers. So many would ask, why? Why are so many Muslims coming to Christ? Many point to this prayer movement that began 30 years ago. And so this prayer movement specifically for Muslims. And at the heart of this prayer movement is the 30 days of prayer for the Muslim world. And so this prayer guide began, and I don't think it's any coincidence that now we have millions of Christians around the world that use this guide to pray for Muslims during Ramadan. And now we're seeing around the same time frame that millions of Muslims are coming to see the Lord. And so this is incredible. So I really don't want our church to miss out. And I've made sure that we have these available to you. And so we have out in the front of the church, we actually have copies available at the table. You can come into the church, just walk in the main doors, and you can grab them right on the table. We also have them available digitally. And so if you email me at missions@crossroadschurch.ca, I can actually email you a copy of this incredible booklet. And I just believe it's so important that we as a church take this advantage and we actually pray for Muslims so that they would come to know Jesus. Now, I first came to know about this booklet when I was in Africa. I moved to Africa in 2003, and I moved to Kenya, and right away I recognized that the organization I had joined had a real big heart for prayer. During Ramadan every year, they would provide these booklets for us, and we would actually pray together every morning during those 30 days. And so we'd spend time as a team, we would read whatever it was that was in the reading for that day, and then break up into prayer groups. And it really influenced how I saw the world. Little did I know that down the road, God was going to put me into the context where I would need to know more and have a soft heart towards Muslims. My first opportunity to work among Muslims was in Darfur. And I'll never forget the first time I sat down in a small group with some women, and I asked them a simple question. I said, "Do you think that I'm a Muslim?" And they all giggled and they laughed and they said, "Of course you are. Everyone is a Muslim." And it just struck me, and it always has, just what a different worldview that they're coming from. Later on, as I had a chance to work in Chad, the government requirement is that if you're with an international organization, you're required to have half Muslims and anyone else on the staff. So I had a staff that was made up of half Muslims and half Christians. And so it was my role to bring us together. And because of the time that I spent in prayer, because of the time that I spent really understanding and listening and trying to understand God's heart for Muslims, I believe that I was way more equipped to be able to serve in that context. Now, as a family, we still we recognize that this is really important as well. And so I've brought that ministry into our home. And it's so cool because my daughter is 6. And these guys have made a resource specifically for kids. And so they've taken the same stories and they've actually added in activities and games. They've simplified the language. And it's this really engaging time for the kids and for all of us as a family. And I love this time together. After dinner, we sit and we go through it together. McKenna can read now and she can pray so well. And it just continues to do what it did to me many, many years ago, where my heart is being softened. And so I'm seeing my husband and my daughter and even my own heart continuing to be opened up to what God is doing and to love people that He created and people that He desires will be in His kingdom someday. Now, as a church, we have lots of strategies. And one of those strategies is that we would actually have outreach that's focused on persecuted believers, national pastors and leaders, and Muslims near and far. You may remember this banner that it hangs in our sanctuary. So one of those strategies, of course, working with Muslims. How we do that is we actually support quite a few organizations that actually believe that reaching out to Muslims is key and it's strategic. And so we support them and we're a part of that. One of those organizations is Empower. You may remember last week in my video, I interviewed Ron Pierce, and he's from Empower. They have incredible stories that they share all the time. And one that he shared with us last week was of this Muslim woman who had met Jesus in her dream. So she had fallen asleep and she woke up and he had healed her, and it was so incredible. And this is what God is doing all over the world. Muslims all over are hearing and seeing of Christ through their visions and dreams, and it is making a huge impact in changing lives. So friends, there are incredible things that God is doing, and I don't want us to miss this opportunity. As a church, I want to know that we are part of this movement, that we are part of this concert of prayer. And so would you join me, and would you join my family, and would you join millions of Christians around the world as we pray for Muslims during Ramadan, that they would come to know the true living Christ. Now, really briefly before I close, I just want to give a quick update with our Crossroads Cares initiative. We've had around 800 people that have received food and hope through these care packages that we have so lovingly prepared for them. And it's such a gift to be able to do this. We want to continue to ask if you're able to give. We can still use donations of food. We continue to see more and more requests come in, and so we want to be able to respond to those. And so we just want to say thank you for everyone that's had a part in that. Thank you so much. That's all I've got for you this week. I look forward to talking to you next week.